Olaikaha, Olaikawai, Olaikai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Olaikaha, Olaikawai, Olaikai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Aloha and welcome. Oops, sorry, microphone. Aloha and welcome to the seventh meeting of the Community Representation Initiative for Red Hill. My name is Marty and I am the chair, and we'll just go down really quick and do introductions. Can we start maybe down with Susan?
Aloha, Susan Gorman Chang from Ewa Beach, and I am a representative representing the community.
Aloha, I'm Melody Aduha, and I represent the organization of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party, and I'm a member of the CRI.
Hello, my name is Lacey Quintero, and I am representing the impacted families.
Hi, this is Walter Chan. I'm born and raised in Hawaii, and I'm a CRI member representing the public.
David Frankel with the Sierra Club.
Aloha kako, o Kearney no Ikoa, o Waimanalo Mayao. I'm Kearney DeFranco, here from Waimanalo, and I'm subbing in for Heilani as a representative of the Native Hawaiian community.
Aloha kako, pau mai ka pi'ina kalai ha'i ka velo ole hua ano ai ke aloha. My name is Malia Marquez. I am representing the community in Al Madero's seat. Mahalo for having me. Aloha.
And then we can take the two members that are, or three members that are online. Go ahead, Elima.
Aloha, Elima De Costa. I'm representing the community members on Oahu. Mahalo to everyone for being here.
Go ahead, Miguel.
Hello, my kako. Alfred Captain Madeira's Po'inua, no wine I mayao. I'm representing for Kanakamoli. But my sister is right there for me in person. Mahalo nui Malia Marquez from Honolulu. Mahalo.
Aloha everyone, Mandy Fine representing impacted families.
Thank you very much. So before we got into the meat of the meeting, I wanted to just take a few minutes to take a step back. We are at the seventh meeting, so we've been in this for just over 6 months. And so I wanted to call everyone's attention to a survey that we have put out on the CRI website. If you can put up the shared screen. So this is contact information for the CRI on our website, and then all the ways to get a hold of us. And we have a survey, and you can either access it through this QR code or go to this link. And we basically, this is an opportunity for the public to give us feedback, let us know how we're doing. You can also give us praises too. But really, we're here to represent the community's interests in terms of the protection of our water and for the shutdown and remediation of Red Hill. And this is halfway through our first year, I guess, of doing this. And so please give us feedback. And we're not only looking for your input, we're also looking for your help. If you have expertise that you would like to volunteer, please let us know. And if you go to the next slide, for reasons that will become more obvious as we go through today's agenda, we're also going to start an effort to request direct support for the CRI's work. The Pacific American Foundation is a 501c3 fiscal sponsor for the CRI for Red Hill, and our fund number is 30021, and so you can see there on the screen their mailing address if you want to mail a paper check, or you can donate online at the website, and just in the memo for the donation put our fund number. And we're looking for these funds just to support our basic operations, rental fees, and the usual things it takes to put together a meeting like this. And the reason why we want to do this is because we want to be able to host these meetings without the uncertainty and insecurity of being dependent on the federal government. To be clear, we definitely think that the federal government owes Hawaii big for all of the harm that has been done here because of the military's presence. But we've also seen that we can't really rely on them, that in particular the U.S. Navy has, they've botched the sampling and the monitoring up to this point. They come to meetings, they don't come to meetings. And so for us to be able to follow through on our work and be able to get the community's interests well represented, we need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet, learn to take care of ourselves. So please, if you feel so inclined, support us. And any other comments along these lines? Anyone? All right, we can get into the first agenda item then, which is the agenda item says Navy's request for mediation, and the EPA, when they received the agenda, made a point to highlight that it's the EPA and the Navy's request for mediation. And I should highlight that it is a very strong request for mediation, and we have been discussing it. The terms of mediation are that they be private, behind closed doors, and the Navy in particular is looking to change the format of these meetings. They don't feel safe and respected at CRI meetings. They don't like the discomfort that comes with being held accountable, which I can understand, but given the fact that people still don't have clean drinking water in their homes, I think the discomfort might be warranted. The EPA has let us know that if we choose not to accept the request for mediation, they may not be able to support the CRI going forward. So it's a serious situation that we're in, and I'm very interested for everyone to hear the reasoning from various members of the CRI as to why we are hesitant to go behind closed doors with the Navy. Who would like to go first? Go for it. Lacey.
One of the biggest concerns I have is that, they're telling us that the whole CRI cannot participate. So how many of us? 1 of us? 2 of us? That doesn't seem fair to the community that elected us, because that will silence people if we're not able to sit here and represent them.
Other thoughts?
Hi, this is Susan. I'm also concerned. I don't think it should be private at all, because we represent the community, we're accountable to the community, and we want to be totally transparent, and we actually mean it, because that's what we do. And also I feel the Navy has their FTEC meetings, their town halls, they have these pop-up information kiosks at different places like malls and Kapālama beach homes. And so they have control over all of those, as far as the agenda, the place, the time. This is the one thing that the community actually has control over. And so I really feel it's important for us to keep this format. Thank you.
I just want to make space for those who are online. If you want to make any comments on these lines, shout out. Okay, go ahead, Lima.
Again, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, and I wanted to state that my concerns with the request for mediation is that the agency, the federal agency that has been tasked with performing the mediation has never done this type of mediation before, and they don't want to do it publicly, and it has to be private. So that's going to be problematic, and there's just no evidence that the mediation is even necessary. Sometimes these situations can be complex and they can be contentious, but as Marty indicated, we're not here to make sure that the military feels comfortable. We're here to hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they're responsible for cleaning up. We do understand, according to a recent Stars and Stripes article that there are forever chemicals in our aina, on our aina, and within the soil, within the vai. So at this point, we're going to have to live with it for some extended period of time. We can't rest easy letting the military feel comfortable. So Kalamai, I do want everyone to be able to come to the table and contribute to this cause, but we're not here to make the military feel good about poisoning these families and the aina. Mahalo.
Thank you. Mandy, go ahead, sorry.
Yes, Marty, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. One, first and foremost, we, the CRI, we're not a federal agency. So in my opinion, we have no business entering into, federal mediation with other federal agencies. We represent the community. And one thing that we have vowed to do is to be transparent. And so it certainly makes me feel uncomfortable that we're being forced into a private mediation without the community being involved. The second thing is, as Admiral Williams likes to point out in his refusal to answer our questions, especially related to PFAS, is that federal mediation is not within the scope of the ACO. And so I think in his own words that this is not within the scope of the ACO, and again, we have no business going into a private mediation with these folks.
Thank you.
I want to add one other concern. Part of the terms of the mediation is that they will have to agree on the agenda items. And that is a huge concern for the impacted community, because if it's up to them, they're never going to make the drinking water quality an issue. They don't want to talk about it.
Go ahead, Walter.
The mediation process, I talked to the mediator this morning, and she explained that the areas that she wants to pursue is process, personality, and conflicts. Those are the three main areas she talked about. I asked what the dispute was, or what it was that would require us to mediate. Primarily, the Navy does not like our agenda. They don't like our format. Particularly, they don't like the public speaking up at the end of our meetings, voicing their concerns, asking questions, those kinds of things. So, as I understand it, the Navy they don't like something, and they don't attend the meetings, although they're required to. So there is a problem, but that problem is between EPA and the Navy. We didn't sign the agreement; they did, and so Section 14 of the Administrative Consent Order is titled Dispute Resolution. So maybe EPA and Navy should go to mediation, figure out what their problem is, and just let us move forward, asking our questions, addressing concerns, waiting since the very beginning for them to respond to us. So that's my take on the mediation.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really disappointed in the EPA, a federal agency that's created to protect the citizens of America from environmental disaster. Since Red Hill opened its doors, threatened life for everyone on Oahu, right? The worst case scenario here is that civilians have to evacuate this island forever. Kanaka Maoli families that sailed here thousands of years ago, now being asked to permanently leave their homeland forever. The questions that are occurring in the CRI meeting are particularly around people that are sick, right? These are facts. The fact is people continue to be poisoned, and the Navy continues to ignore and gaslight. And at the end of the day, the EPA created the CRI committee in response to a very large cry from the public demanding answers, demanding transparency. This is not the first time Red Hill's spilled. It's been spilling since it opened its doors. But in the most recent spills, the Navy and the U.S. military has had every single opportunity to be transparent, to hold open community meetings, to set their own agenda, to set their own cadence, right? And the communities continue to ask them to just do that, and they're refusing to. And so I'm extremely disappointed in the EPA not standing behind the citizens of this country, and especially the Kanaka Maoli that exists in this country under military occupation.
Thank you. Irima, do you have your hand up again? Do you have another comment you'd like to make? Okay, all right. Go ahead, Melody.
Okay, thank you. I guess this is the first time I've heard that they want to mediate with us, but not with the whole group. So that I was quite surprised. I mean, we are operating under the rules that were originally under the AOC, which was a result of 1,700 people of the public making the comment and saying, hey, we want to have a seat at the table. Because all this time we've never had a seat at the table. And so EPA honored that and created these rules and had a election. We were all duly elected. And even the way the membership is divided as to who we are representing, for people from the public, to people that are affected families, and to people that are from organizations, and of course important also is of course Kanaka Ma'ole. So we have followed the rules that the EPA has set, and in the middle of the stream they're saying, oh no, we're going to change the rules, and if you don't abide by these new rules, then we're not going to support you. So they are in breach of their own contract. There's, we can force the issue, and I'm not sure whether we will, because of course that's going to take resources which we don't have. So what we need to do is just steadfast, like we are now, and having this meeting without the rebuttal, I guess, or the benefit of having the EPA and the Navy and DLA. But the important thing is that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and that is being the mouth of the public, being the ones that will, hopefully, they will listen to what we're saying here and approach them, and they will answer our questions. Because that's the main thing. They don't want to cooperate on something that they themselves have put together in order to benefit the community. So all we can do, Marty, is just be steadfast, and if we're going to be ghosted, so be it. As long as a channel between us as CRI and the public is available, then we feel that we are doing our end of the bargain. Thanks.
Just to underscore what Melody said, there were a series of private meetings held with the EPA and the Navy, and people who were interested in helping to form the CRI. This is like pre-election, and we talked about what our expectations were for these meetings, and even after the election, leading up to the first meeting in October, and we had top Navy officials at these meetings. Everybody remembers Bob talking about how he was like, I'm across the hallway from the head lady. They agreed to having public meetings and to having public testimony. They agreed to having the agenda worked out this way, where we make a proposal and they can voice their concerns, which they have. The Navy has voiced concerns about issues that we've put on the agenda. Some of them, we have heeded those concerns. Like, for example, we wanted to have someone present about the technology of hydro panels, which can provide clean water from the air, basically, to each household. It costs a couple $1,000s, and it's something that the Department of Defense is well aware of, technology that they could install in these homes to provide clean drinking water. And bathing water, but the Navy didn't want to have that person present, and so we took it off the agenda. And other times, when, like, for example, at the last meeting, we really wanted to talk about PFAS, and the Navy feels that PFAS is outside the scope of the AOC. We put it on the agenda, and we allowed them to just say the same statement over and over again about how they feel that it's outside the scope. And I think these are ways in which we can transparently handle the lack of consensus between the Navy officials and CRI members. I feel like we have, like Melody said, like, we made an agreement like this. These were the terms under which we all agreed that we would engage, and the Navy doesn't like it, and so now they want to change it. And I feel like that's sort of typical of the, at least my experience, and with them. And so, and I think that part of the reason why it's so important for me that we continue to maintain a public meeting space for everyone the reason why I don't want to go behind closed doors with Navy officials is because I feel like it will undermine the trust that we have built with the public. And it's a trust that we've earned by being forthright and pointed, direct. We are direct with them, and we're transparent. And honestly, it's that kind of behavior that people are eager for, are yearning for, that they haven't seen by other government officials, right? We watched the Water Commission meeting earlier this week, and the level of banter and joking between the state officials and the Navy was really disheartening, disconcerting. It left a bad feeling in my stomach. The way the chair was like, "Flee now before the public, gets here," right? It was just outrageous. And I think it's that kind of behavior that has really fueled the lack of trust between the public and our governments at various levels. And this kind of transparency, as uncomfortable as it is the only way that we're ever going to get to a place where we can, try to have some accountability. Otherwise, they will forever be leading us down the rosy path. So now that we've all sort of expressed, unless there's anybody else who has anything else they want to say, anything you want to add? Okay, so what do we do? Oh, of course. You said you weren't going to say anything. You liar.
Well, now that we have had the Navy and EPA's request for mediation on the agenda, and we've discussed it, they're not here. I do not want to spend time on this topic at a future meeting. This was the opportunity the Navy had. They had our agenda. They're refusing to discuss it. Therefore, I don't want to have this item on our agenda for the next meeting when Navy and EPA show up. Theoretically, they're going to show up. They had their opportunity to discuss it with us. They decided not to come. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, wait, just to clarify. So in your mind then, what we do is we just send them an email and say, we've considered your request for mediation. Your request has been rejected. Thank you very much. See you in May.
That's A, or B.
Okay.
B is, you knew we were going to discuss mediation on this day, at this time. You chose not to come. We can only interpret that as your refusal to discuss and justify your request for mediation. Therefore, we're not going to be discussing it at the next few meetings. You had your chance.
Okay, go for it, Walter. Yeah.
I guess, I support what Melody and Susan also said about this mediation of the trust and our communications with the public. But I think everybody should keep in mind, at that meeting last year in 2023, the commitment by EPA, their promise to the people of this state, was that we would have the public participation in asking questions and addressing concerns. The CRI was their promise, their commitment to all of us. And so now to withdraw support from the CRI because we won't mediate their agenda or whatever they want, I think that is a breach in their own agreement and their promise to us. So, and we all trusted EPA, at least a little bit anyway, with the consent order. But today, they're not here. They chose not to be here along with the Navy. They apparently tried to put more pressure on us. So our promise, or their promise to us, we expect them to keep it.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion or conversation?
I got one more.
Yes, go for it.
I'm looking at this in terms of how is this going to affect the impacted community, okay? Because right now, they show up sometimes, they don't show up sometimes. The outcome is the same right now. They continue to ignore, they're still not listening to families, they're doing nothing for these families who are having health problems in their own homes. Okay, so we mediate, we don't mediate, they're still not doing anything. And this feels very threatening from both the Navy and the EPA. What are they trying to do? Are they silencing the impacted community because they don't want to hear? I don't think it'll be on the agenda if we accept but what's the threat to us as a CRI if we don't? And ultimately, what does that mean for the people who are in the homes suffering right now?
Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, so if we send them either A or B email that Professor Frankel has suggested, we run the risk of there not being other CRI meetings. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
We're going to call their bluff, basically.
I don't, actually, if they don't show up, they don't show up. But they're not doing anything anyway. And one of the most important things that they hate to admit, and they do not want to admit, is that when we have the public people come up and speak, we have military family members that grab that microphone and tell their story of their pain and illnesses, and they beg the Navy to care, to do one thing, take one moment, care about what they're suffering, what they're going through and their suffering, and take some actions to relieve their pain and suffering. The one thing they ask and they beg, the Navy will not do. So I don't care if they don't show up for mediation, or they don't show up because of mediation.
Can I add one thing, please?
Yes, go ahead.
This whole thing, the reason why those folks are not sitting across the table, it is all about control. And the Navy does not have control when we allow the public, the impacted families, the people of Hawaii to speak, and to speak from their heart, and to speak from their experiences, and to speak from their fear of what's happened and what's to come. And that's not what this is about. This is about rebuilding trust. And the Navy speaks that, they spend a lot, thousands and thousands of dollars into messaging. We heard, even in the commission meeting just the other day about, before they put this out, they've got to get their strat plan together, their strategic communications together, so that we'll all buy off on it. The Navy could have used us as a bridge to try to rebuild trust, and now they've burned that bridge even with us. And I just think that it's very rich of the Navy to ask anything of us at this point when they've left hundreds of questions unanswered from the very beginning. For months, questions from the community have gone unanswered. And this whole public messaging thing, it's getting really old, because actions speak far louder than words. And the actions, the empty seats, speak to how much they truly care about rebuilding trust with the community for what they've done and they continue to do, which is poisoned the people and poisoned the land. And so, and the last thing too is, I am very disappointed with the EPA as well. They're not getting it out here, at least not for me, because these folks, these EPA folks, they continue to meet with the Navy. And they've not, every time the Navy has refused to meet with us in the community, the EPA follows suit. And I think it's extremely disrespectful. And like Walter said, they have gone back on their word to be transparent, to support the community, and they show that not being here again tonight. That's all.
Okay, so next steps. Okay, let me offer a counter proposal to Professor Frankel's proposal. What if we said something to the effect of, once the Navy provides clean drinking water to the homes that are directly affected on the Navy water lines, then we will consider a mediation conversation, whether it's public or private. We can have a separate conversation about that, but basically mediation right now is not an option on the table, because we still have the urgent need of people without clean drinking water at home.
It's clean water that doesn't cause illness.
Clean water doesn't cause illness, right? Not safe water, as the Navy defines it. Got it.
Exactly.
Understood. Fair qualification there. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like that idea, because it's the only shot that we might have to actually get them to do something.
Okay.
If we end the mediation, or we just, participate without objection to how they want it to be done, the outcome is the same for the resident. So this is our only shot, in my opinion.
Okay, all right. So there was a question in the chat on the Zoom about what the Navy's and EPA's reasoning for not attending this meeting is. And basically the administrative order on consent requires the Navy to attend 2 meetings of the CRI per quarter. And so this being the first month of the quarter, they opted not to attend this one. So they can come in May and in June and still be in compliance with the AOC. But in email correspondence with them, they have indicated that they are currently not inclined to continue to participate in CRI meetings until mediation is complete. I think, this just goes to show that the Navy only does the minimum of what they're required to do, right? Like when we first, like I said, set out the cadence for these meetings and the format for them, and the Navy official, Bob Thompson, agreed to all of these terms, and said, yeah, we'll meet with you monthly, the more the merrier, I think was his term. And then here we are, because it's not part of the minimum requirements, they aren't going to do it. And so, anything that we would like to see the Navy do, it has to be a requirement. And so, yeah, I think that's an important consideration. And so maybe the ask is that for the EPA to require that the Navy provide clean drinking water to everyone on the Navy water lines, and then we would consider mediation. And until then, CRI meetings will continue as usual. And if the Navy doesn't attend, there's going to be a huge bucket of fines that we would like to have an opinion on how it's spent. Okay, all right, great. Will you write that email for me? Right on. All right, anything else on this agenda item?
About the survey.
So the online survey that we showed earlier, the QR code for, and is available on our website, has questions about the mediation. If anybody else has additional input on what I should say in this email to the Navy and the EPA, please let me know. I'll probably send it on Monday, so you have a few days at least to help with that. And if there's any other good ideas, I'm happy to forward them as well. Anything else from those online before we move on to the next agenda item?
Just if folks can speak as loud as you can.
Okay, speak.
Actually, I did want to share something real quick if I could.
Yeah, go for it, Lima.
Sorry. I had an opportunity to view the transfer of this operation from the Navy from one task force to another task force. And basically, during that evolution, this is what I actually heard from Admiral Barnett. He basically is quoting a poet, and he's talking about alignment and truth of being the key to the healing process. And I think that is what we really need to focus on. We really want the Navy, the federal government, to come to the table as fair bargainers, and this process is not fair. Having a mediation to be able to control the agenda and to be able to quiet the public and quiet the CRI that had been elected by the public to represent them, this is not a democratic process. So there's no way that we can accept that this is reasonable because it's just not a democratic process. So I encourage everyone to watch the video that was produced, I think it was March 28th, 2024, when the transfer occurred. And most notably, the CRI is not acknowledged or mentioned at all. And the CRI was not invited to attend this event, but the governor was invited and lots of other dignitaries, including, I think, Mazie Hirono and some other folks were there, but no one from the CRI, and the CRI was not mentioned at all. So I don't know if we can trust the Navy to be honest and truthful if they won't even acknowledge our existence and they didn't invite us to participate in that transfer. Mahalo.
Yeah, just to underscore that point, Lima, I was struck by the Water Commission meeting on Tuesday, where they talked a lot about the issues that we have been raising here, and worked really hard not to mention the CRI at all. And but I think it's important to note that we have really done a very good job, I think, of escalating the concerns of directly affected families and of pulling back the curtain on the sampling and the problems underlying that. And I mean, unfortunately now we're in a place where, you know, the Navy has cast all of this doubt over their own testing abilities. So even when we get high TPH readings, you know, they're able to explain it away because they have, you know, done poor sampling all along. And how pathetic is it that they have collected 8,000 samples, that they knew about this issue with drinking water having chlorine in it, and therefore not being the test that they do to identify TPH, you know, not be interacting with the chlorine. They knew about that from the beginning, and they did it anyway, and they just, you know, they didn't adapt. They didn't try to find a test that would give us an accurate reading of TPH levels that didn't interact with the chlorine. Lo and behold, to find out from the Department of Health that such a test exists, but they don't want to use it for whatever reason. Like, it's just, it's ridiculous. And unfortunately or fortunately, it was, you know, these CRI meetings that brought that information to light. I don't think we ever would have gotten to that in any other format or forum that the Navy has been presenting in. So I think the CRI has demonstrated its value and should continue, and that the Navy needs to put on its big britches and come to these hard meetings. All right, any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Malia.
You know, seeing, is this on? Hold on, Mike. Seeing empty seats is a big slap in the face. It's not a surprise to Kanaka. We're used to that. The problem is when you put yourself on a level above others, which they're apparently doing, and think of this board members that represent our Aina, and just kind of flick it to the side, is it's a typical military response. So what I say as a substitute, because, you know, Al can handle his own, but holamua with this, never mind what they're doing. Once they breach their contract, go for it. It's time already to flip this switch on people that have been invading our Aina and our people and hurting their own people in this land. I mean, my God, they're hurting their own people. Can you imagine if they hurt Kanaka? They don't care. Yeah. They never have. Yeah. Their own people are sick and they're not doing anything about it. So keep moving forward, click them to the side and take them for all you can get. It's time.
Thank you, thank you.
I think I will.
Go for it, Uncle Walter.
I agree 100%, absolutely. My biggest fear is that 20 years from now, a decade, 2 decades, my daughter, my children, my grandchildren will be sitting here saying the same exact thing. The only difference is going to be, instead of military families up there telling their stories of pain and illnesses, it will be my children, our children, speaking about the destruction of our land. We have to stand up today. Whether you call us the CRI or not, call us whatever you want. We can still be the voice of the public, and we still have to continue, and as you said, persevere.
All right, thank you very much. Good job. Okay, so let's move on to the next agenda item then. In February, their very high TPH readings were collected in 2 locations, including Hickam Elementary School. And the Navy attempted to explain away the high TPH readings based on quenching. And so we thought we would take a few minutes to just better understand what the hell's going on. So, Walter, are you?
Okay, one of the things, we were notified in April. I think it was 8 days or so after they found these samples. Although we understand that EPA informed the principal of the school, parents were not informed. One of the samples came from a residence, I believe at AMR, and again, we weren't informed. So the EPA's position is they don't have to tell us, there's no requirement for them to notify us. The Navy doesn't acknowledge any requirement to notify people that they're going to be exposed or that they were exposed to poisoning in their drinking water. And again, how does that affect our children? How does that affect our adults? So when we look at these TPH numbers, and they're basically water samples, they pick a number. And so for this particular incident, the Department of Health calculated a number at 266 parts per billion to be the parameter at which anything above that may not be safe, but everything underneath is unsafe. So 265 parts per billion, if we give you water with 265 or 260 parts per billion, they're saying it's safe. The chances of you getting sick, something happening, is something like 1 in a million. So 1 in a million, if I figure that out in terms of people, that would be 0.093 for 93,000 people, basically zero. If the odds were 1 in 100,000, it would be 0.93, maybe one person. If it was 1 in 10,000, it would be 1 in 10. Up to this point, we have over 100 people that have reported health effects of one type or another. So obviously their number is not valid. So when we look at the data that they give us, and they post it on the JBPHH Safe Waters website, you can look at all of this data. It's very difficult to read, very complicated. And when you look at it generally, if you could kind of look at it in summary, there are numbers that we look at that are between 50 and 100 parts per billion, which means there is petroleum products in the water. So number one, the very first thing they tried to convince us was there wasn't JP5, and that's, again, a lot of times when they talk to us, you have to listen very carefully, not always at what they say. When they're done talking, you have to say, okay, what did they not tell us? And half the time, that's the problem. So when we look at these numbers and they go, it's not JP5, but we look at it, there's diesel, motor oil, gasoline, one of the petroleum products that they don't look at and they don't tell us about. But if you were to drink or inhale some of that stuff, benzene is a carcinogen. So that's one of the most important ones. But there are other contaminants within the gasoline range, but they don't count that. And so you have to figure that out yourself, and then when you do, you can ask them, and then you'll get this run around for an answer. So when we look at the data, we have to kind of figure out this stuff ourselves. The bottom line is we're not getting truthful information. So the purpose of the CRI was for them to share information with us that we could share with the public. And half the time we're questioning the information they give us, this TPH with the school, the residents. I think there was one at NOAA as well, right? So
The pier.
we have different samples in their water system using their sampling process that is telling us there is a contamination problem within the water system. We don't know what it is. We never hear, they never give us speeches or briefings on what they're doing to find what is the problem in the water. They're telling us what they're doing to be able to convince us that it's not a problem. And that's pretty much where we are with that issue. And I think going on in the future, we need to start looking at the water system, demand that they start doing testing, not to tell us what's not in the water, not to tell us that it's not JP5. We need them to tell us what's in the water, where is it coming from. We need to see water testing of the system in different portions of the system, from Waiava all the way down to Pearl Harbor. And out to your great point, how are they isolating the system? How are they testing it? How are they checking it? And how are we doing a bunch of these things? So one other thing I would like to point out is the Navy has 8,000 samples, or more than 8,000 water samples. And they have all this data and information that they post on the website, which doesn't mean anything to us. It took a member of the public, somebody from outside, to sit down and pour through every one of those entries and come up with graphs and charts to tell us, or to tell them, what their data is showing. That happened since October of last year, and she keeps presenting this information all the time at all of the meetings, explaining to them, and not one of them ever blink an eye. So it's, is Susan out
She's
there?
here. She's here.
Susan,
And she plans to present later.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Susan has put this information, this data together that has been very, very helpful, that can help people look at a chart, a graph, rather than having to go through all this data. So how are we doing? How are they doing in providing information, sharing stuff with us, especially about the contamination in the water, what kinds of things they're doing to the system, how we can read and understand this data? We're not getting that, but as a community, we can probably try to figure it out ourselves.
I would like to underscore that the Navy and the EPA knew about the high TPH readings at the end of February. We had a meeting of the CRI in March, the end of March. They did not tell us then. That would have been the prime opportunity to tell us that one of the rules of the AOC also says that the Navy has an obligation to notify the CRI if there's any event, I believe is the term used. And I feel like this qualifies as an event that should have gotten the CRI a heads up. And at the very least, it was the Navy's opportunity to demonstrate goodwill and their ability to be transparent and to come through, and be forthright and honest with us. And instead, they hit the ball, and it wasn't until we found out about it later, after we lost the opportunity to actually drill down and ask questions about what was going on, and that really further undermined my trust in them. So yes, go ahead, Lacey.
Regarding the quenching, at the most recent FTAP meeting, some of us were there. I could not believe what I was hearing and seeing. They put up a PowerPoint. They had a paid expert up there who claimed to be a chemist, but now we find out he actually isn't. That was just one of the things he said that wasn't true. At some point, he said that their theory was that these positive TPH detections were being caused by the lipids in lab gloves. It was so outrageous. It's like, how dumb can you be to get up there and say that? How would that even explain all of the families coming in and having burning eyes, burning skin? It's just a stupid excuse anyways, but let's just pretend it's possible. How would that connect to somebody taking a shower and their eyes burning? Their baby having skin rashes they never had before? Pick any of the health symptoms that people continue to experience. It just doesn't explain away what is really happening in real life. And so if anyone was there, I was very upset and emotional. Of course I am. I hate to know that people are still being poisoned. I hate to know that when I broke my lease and moved out, they immediately moved someone in that same week, and those people have been sick since the day they moved in. And when they break their lease and new people move in, I hate to think about what the same fate for them too. There are new families moving in that don't even know what Red Hill is, with the same symptoms that my own family had so of course I'm emotional standing up there and listening to these lies. And then of course after that meeting they wanted to, instead of addressing all these crazy things, they want to attack the impacted families and call us emotional. So I just need the public to be aware of what's going on in and out of this room as they go around the island trashing not only the people who are victims of their negligence, but also the CRI.
Just to help provide a little more context for what we're discussing, we have a couple of maps that we can show, and we have someone here who has some expertise in this area who helped make these maps, and can also help talk a little bit about the quenching and the high TPH readings. So Shannon, if you would like to, yeah.
Here, do you want to go up to the screen maybe? Or?
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm Shannon Benz. I'm not an expert in water, but I can read, so I will try to get through this. So up on the map this is basically the water system.
Shannon, you gotta put it more like thank you.
Okay, great. So in the lower right-hand corner is Red Hill. Red Hill Boat Fuel Storage Facility, top right part. Then there's Red Hill Shaft that's turned off right now. And the Halava Shaft is over to the west, and then Waiiwa Shaft is up, if you think up by Waimalala Home Road towards Pearl City High School, that's kind of that direction. It shoots up from Kamehameha Highway and then comes down, swoops over to Pearl Harbor, goes out of Ford Island, down to Hickam, and then it kind of shoots back over to Iroquois Point towards Viva Beach. So if you're in the privatized housing or near the exchange or anywhere in that sector, golf course, Hickam, you're on the water line. So it can be cross-connected by Board of Water Supply water, but from this point, I believe it's being fed by Halava Shaft and Waiiwa Shaft. So, so going to the next photo.
Can you
sorry.
back?
Yes, go back one.
So that's the water line, right?
Yes, so there's darker lines, kind of like a darker shade of gray in the kind of in the center of those grayish points, and that's the actual water line, the way it goes, and it's fed throughout the vicinity, but it does spread out. It has little
That's
webs.
the blue line.
The
No,
blue
the
line
blue line
is
is
H1,
Okay.
H3.
So the gray
Oh,
hash.
I'm sorry. So the darker gray line, and we'll see it better on the next map, but this is actually the Red Hill fuel tanks, and then it goes down, kind of goes down to a Y, shoots down over the H201, H1, and then it shoots down underneath. This is actually a tunnel underneath is where the pipeline is. It runs under homes, under the city, goes down and shoots kind of towards Pack Fleet, goes right under Pack Fleet, and then shoots under the H1, going to Makalapa Crater, going through there to Pearl Harbor to Adit 1. So that's kind of where the pipeline is. So even though it's in a tunnel, so I want to kind of talk about this a little bit. So there is I didn't put it on here, but there's a commercial pipeline that actually shoots, goes along Kamehameha and goes out towards Kapolei. A lot of people know it goes out to Campbell Industrial Park. So that's the PAR pipeline, the HECO pipeline. So they are required to, when the pipeline goes underground, to stick spikes and signs up saying, hey, there's a pipeline here, don't dig. You know, if you smell gas, if you smell anything, this is a leak, call this number. So I recommend that hopefully the Navy military will start putting spikes up along the pipeline, even though it's in a tunnel underground, running under houses and city streets, all the way up to Halava Valley. So, could be a recommendation.
Thanks.
All right, if you go to the next one, this one's a little faint, but this is kind of a bigger blown up shot of Red Hill tanks up in Halava Valley, up in the right, upper left right corner. It goes down, you go down through, there's a couple adits, adit 4 and adit 3, and then it kind of shoots down again to a Y where there's a kind of a break. This is where the Red Hill shaft is, where the water system is. Actually, there's a water line. It shoots down the same tunnel as the Red Hill pipelines and goes down this way and then spiders out into the Navy drinking water system. So that's where those lines are. But as you can see, it goes straight under, I'm sure these are houses, the exchange, different points, and then it shoots under the H1 again and goes, you know, this is kind of Makalapa Crater and then goes out to Joint Base Pearl Harbor.
Okay, so just to underscore what you were explaining at that Y area is that there is a water line and a fuel line in the same tunnel.
In the same tunnel. Yep. And it's just like a mine. It's just like I like to explain it like a tunnel that you go like a Disneyland at the at one of those rides. You just walk in and it's just dome shaped and just shoots down straight to Pearl Harbor.
Any other questions about the maps?
Does it go at all into Westlock?
No, not the pipeline, or not the underground pipeline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had a question. there was a sign up that said, if you smell anything, call this number, but it must have been for something else. And by the way, I called that number and it just rang and rang and rang.
So going out that direction is actually a commercial pipeline, so it could be the PAR pipeline out there. But you saw a sign. So, and if I could step back just like a few minutes ago, to talk a little bit more about quenching. Again, I'm not an expert in water, but so quenching, I just want to kind of break it down in layman's terms. So quenching is used on chlorinated water system drinking water samples. So quenching is essentially neutralizing that chlorine so it doesn't interfere with the volatile organic chemicals, things that you find in fuels, just chemicals, which shouldn't be in drinking water. So there's a couple different agents or studies. The EPA has a study online. I'm sure the Navy has their own studies, and they usually typically follow the EPA, studies. So these are like in writing. People understand them. People know they kind of lean towards what should you use to neutralize the chlorine, what agent. There's a couple different agents called sodium persulfate. Another one I believe the Navy mentioned at the Water Commission meeting a couple days ago, sodium thiosulfate. And there's another one called ascorbic acid. So with, actually this is a study I picked up off the EPA's website. So sodium persulfate, for example, can destroy up to 100%, 50 to 100% of the volatile organic chemicals or compounds in a sample. So essentially it destroys the entire sample, or has a potential to. So you'll get false negatives. So that's what happens with that. In this study, sodium thiosulfate is actually recommended not to be used because it destroys lab equipment, and it actually reacts with the samples in such a way where it turns into a solid. So there's a potential where it won't register correctly or sample correctly 100%. So, but there's also another agent, which I'm really surprised that isn't being used, which has absolutely no reactions. It's actually recommended in a lot of these studies. Ascorbic acid retains up to 100% or more, 100% of the samples. So I recommend that ascorbic acid, be used, and it's a preservative for these samples. So I mean, hopefully these aren't being, the bad sampling ways are not being purposely used in that regard. So hopefully they'll use ascorbic acid. But again, I think sodium persulfate also reacts with chemical or with lab equipment. So the reactions with the gloves, like you were talking about at the earlier meetings, could be a result of that. So seeing those actual samples in writing from the companies in which they're being sampled from would be really effective to see, so we could see how these tests are being, executed and confirmed. But thank you.
Okay, questions. Hang on. Okay, go ahead, Susan, and then Lacey.
Yeah, so you were saying, the proper method is to quench them to counteract the chlorine. So I'm wondering, I guess you probably can't answer this question, but did the labs know what they were supposed to be doing? Did the Navy give them the right information? Did the Navy tell them the water was chlorinated? There's just so many questions, right?
Yeah, so that's a great question. If it's a drinking water sample, most likely it's chlorinated, and these companies know. Yet sometimes you have a choice. Okay, what do you want to use to quench? Sometimes you can pick a test. It's just like a menu of tests at these sites. I'm not really sure what company the Navy's using, but you can be purposeful at choosing that, or get recommendations from companies. So.
Wow, it sounds like a lot of opportunity to manipulate the methods and the samples. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
At least she's giving us actionable information. We can like request that the Navy use the other chemical
Yes.
in the quenching process.
Yeah, no, this is gold. Thank
Yeah.
you so
Would-
much, Shannon.
Would it be possible to go back? I mean, so the samples the 8,000 they've already taken, are they already ruined, or can we go back and use a different method and get a better sense of what's going on?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I'm not there. It would be nice. So normally in the fuels community, I don't know the drinking water community, but we have to retain samples. Normally it's 60 days, sometimes longer, depending on what the situation is. Definitely if there's like for example, if there's an aircraft mishap, we never get rid of that fuel until investigation's complete. So it's, it's kind of like event. Like if you think you need the samples, you should retain it. So hopefully the Navy is retaining at some periodicity to keep these things on file, splitting the sample. I think the DOH and Navy are not splitting the samples. So strongly recommend if samples are being taken from homes that the residents keep a sample. If the Navy or the DOH or EP takes a sample, then you can just mark it 8 times stamp.
Excellent. Okay, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, wait, Lacey and then Mandy online. Oh, I need the mic. Sorry.
I just have to ask the most obvious question to put it on record that I asked it. Would any of those preservatives, any of them, no matter what you used in the lab, cause people in their homes to have burning skin and eyes and various other things? Is that possible?
So they're so this sodium persulfate, this sodium thiosulfate, they're chemicals. They're hazardous materials. I don't think, so if you pull a sample, you're usually pulling it out of a line or pulling it out of a faucet, so I don't see them putting it into the water system unless they're trying to, I don't see them trying to quench the entire fuel,
Right. They
drinking
don't put
water
it.
line.
They don't put it in a shower head, right?
Right.
Or a sink tap.
Right.
Or
But I'm not there. I don't want to answer for them, but that's just what I would think.
right.
Thank you. Okay, Mandy, go ahead.
Shannon, going back to the maps, the diagrams, I don't know if you said this or if I read this somewhere, but is it a requirement for the military to mark, I think you said something about recommendation, but is it a requirement for the military to mark where those lines are so that folks are cognizant of where they are? And my second question would be, as a follow-up, if there potentially was a leak, or when we talk about vapor intrusion or soil, wouldn't it be nice to know, especially if, I don't know, you're at an elementary school or it's running underneath your home, would it be nice to know where those lines are so that potentially it could explain why they're smelling fuel or why their grass smells like a gas station if there's a leak?
Yeah, great question. So, because Pearl Harbor there's a DFSP or Defense Fuel Support points at various bases. The Army has at Schofield, Kaneohe, Pearl Harbor. Because this location is so old, it was built, all these areas were built in World War II or earlier. It was never a requirement because they're grandfathered, and that's prior EPA. The EPA didn't exist back then, so it was grandfathered and never turned into a requirement. But the commercial pipelines, it is a requirement because they're out in the community in definitely different states and whatnot. So the Exxon, the Chevrons, they have these big giant pipelines that cross the country. The various ones that are miles and miles long. The companies have people walking the lines every day because that's the first sign of an oil spill is you smell it. You smell it, you see it. So it's good to mark them, especially when especially with they're underground. A lot of the pipelines on the mainland are above ground now because of corrosion and whatnot. But it should be a requirement despite how old they are or if it's grandfathered.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much, Shannon. I appreciate it.
I guess I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mentioned earlier about the Navy, what the Navy doesn't tell us. So one of the, it was really important, Shannon, thanks for giving us this information. What we need to see is the overlay of the fuel lines, the water lines, and then all of the hazardous waste sites from Wahiawa all the way down. So wherever we have water lines, especially where we have leaks in the system, the Navy water system is very old. It's 50, 60, 70 years old. And there's portions of it that is the old iron pipes, and then we have PVC pipes. So there's areas that are leaking. We want to know which areas could be possible sources for the fuel or for petroleum products to get into the water. So one of the things to keep in mind is the petroleum products in the water, the diesel, some of the oil, has been in their drinking water before this incident, well before this incident. So we've known it, the Department of Health has known it, they established action levels that they've kind of been watching here and there, but again, we don't have access to all that data, so we're not sure. But we need to know where the water lines are, where the hazardous waste sites are, where previous spills occurred, and then how are they testing the water to check for all of the leaks.
Okay.
Oh, I guess.
Go ahead.
A leak, water coming out of a pipe, let's say a small, tiny leak coming out of the pipe. When the water starts to collect and puddle, when you have water running in the pipe, what it does is it creates a vacuum where that hole is. So it could suck in that contaminant that's in and around the leak. And if we have a very old system and we have lots of leaks here and there, we could have, that could be the source of where the sources of the petroleum products are coming from.
Yeah, I will note that, for one of the very high TPH samples, it was taken from AMR, which is behind a secondary filtering system, another GAC, similar to the one that's by the pump and dump water in Halap Stream, on the idea that the Army invests a little bit more in their people, and so they installed a GAC and to filter the water being provided by the Navy water lines before it gets to residents. And yet we saw this really high TPH reading at a home in AMR, that's really concerning to me. We need to figure out through process elimination what's going on there. One of the options could be that contaminants are getting into the really old water lines. Some people may recall the report that the Safe Drinking Water Branch did of the investigation that they did of the Navy water lines and just how old they were. I think this is in 2022. Does anybody remember this? 2022? It might have been 2023. Time is kind of irrelevant in some ways. There were geckos and bugs and really just not well maintained at all. It was super gross. And so the fact that there might be hairline cracks in the pipelines, I think is a concern. All right, any other discussion on agenda item 2?
Independent science.
Yeah, well, so we have been talking about the idea of possibly the CRI supporting efforts to collect samples independent of the federal government. So this is an option that we're exploring. And I don't know if there's actually much to discuss at this point, but we know that we can't really rely on the federal government to do it, and so we need to figure out something else. So we're open to all the options. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so I'm looking at this. It says approximately 2.5 parts of ascorbic acid is required for neutralizing 1 part of chlorine. Do we know how much chlorine is in the water when they were doing the samples? And I guess that means that it's showing a false positive. So we would have to neutralize first, and then I guess I heard that we could still do that with those 8,000 samples, because they're saying something is wrong not with the water, but with the equipment.
Yeah. Which doesn't account for the fact that people who are using the water are having these direct experiences of harm, right? So,
Right.
yeah, it's Insufficient answer, yeah.
Yeah, it's an excuse.
Okay,
thank you.
in the interest of time, let's move on to agenda item 3, PFAS, forever chemicals. Melody, do you want to take the lead on this one? We we wanted to discuss, our reasoning in terms of why PFAS is inside the scope of the administrative order on consent, and also the EPA's new recent announcement of new regulations on 6 forms of PFAS.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, under the 2023 EPA AOC, there's 3 objectives. Number 1 is a safe defueling. Number 2 is a closure. And number 3 would be protection of the health and safety of the consumers. And the consumers would be those that are on the water line. And timing-wise, the first major spill was November 20th, 2021. And approximately a little over a year was the second spill of the AFFF with PFAS, November 29th, 2022. And the AOC was not signed until June 2nd, 2023. So they were fully aware that there was an issue here, and yet they did not, or so they claim, explicitly put it into the AOC, which would then justify them answering the questions that we ask regarding the PFAS. In the AOC, and I did bring this up with the EPA and Dusty, even though he wrote the AOC, did not recall this part of it, and that would be under Attachment A, page 14, or if you look at the whole AOC, it would be page 58, where it says that they need to identify potential sources of significant contamination within the wellhead protection areas located at the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. And that includes ground storage tanks, landfills, livestock confinement areas, roadways, sewage treatment facilities, cesspools, underground tanks, French drains, dry wells, and old dumps and mines. So it's quite a big umbrella where they need to identify any significant source of contamination, and yet they say, oh no, not PFAS. It's not included. And so the question is, why would that not be considered a significant source of contamination? Especially now with the new rules, which Professor Frankel will talk about. So that is the question as to why, when you've got safe defueling, that's safe for us to ask, closure, that's safe for us to ask, but when it comes to protection of the health and safety of its consumers, they're saying, no, we can't ask that. And that is our precise goal. I believe it has gotten that way with the CRI, especially with Lacey and Mandy, is that we've got affected people here, and we need to know why. So why not look at all avenues, especially when it's foreseeable? We know that the first spill came from the water suppression line. We know the second spill came from a direct water suppression line. And so why would that not be within the purview of the AOC? Yeah, so that's
Thank you, Melody.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Unless you have anything else.
No, that's about it. I think the magnitude, the gravity, the health risk of PFAS is so much greater. Professor Frankel will talk about it. But it is so much greater than TPH that now we have a first time an enforceable level nationwide. So how do we deal with that if the Navy's not even going to acknowledge that we have the right to know? Okay, thank you.
I want to underscore that so we have had a significant amount of PFAS concentrate released into the environment. While some PFAS has shown up in the water, it appears to be older. And so, you know, at least the hope in my mind is that the PFAS that has been recently released in concentrate form hasn't actually reached the water supply yet. It's like in the ground around the tanks. And the hope in my mind is that means that there's an opportunity then for us to capture that PFAS before it reaches the water supply. But unfortunately, we don't have the technology right now to identify the PFAS and to capture it. We need to invent that. And you know, given what we know about the way our water supply works, it takes about 20 years for water to percolate down through the ground to the aquifer. So the clock is ticking. We have 20 years to figure out how to catch the PFAS before it gets into the water supply. And it really makes me mad to think that we are wasting time, you know, trying to figure out whether PFAS is in the scope of this conversation or not. Like, it clearly is. And the sooner we can start talking about it, the sooner we can start finding a solution. Yeah, that's my comment on it. Other discussion about PFAS? Go for it.
Yeah, this is just ridiculous. I mean, who is the Navy to tell us which chemicals we can kind of have a conversation about that are threatening everyone's life here, right? At a minimum, the Navy should be at this table answering for that, and at a minimum, they should be providing funding to the Board of Water Supply to be able to install monitoring wells, which need to happen immediately, yet they don't have the funding to do that. So if they're not going to show up to the table, they need to start to pay and give us funding immediately so we can save ourselves.
No? Okay. Anyone else? Anything else? All right, so PFAS will continue to be an ongoing conversation whether the Navy wants to have it or not. Good. All right, are we ready to move on to the next agenda item? We are moving into old business and following up. We've been very concerned about trying to help those families that have been directly affected by contaminated water supplies. And so we have some updates.
Okay.
So, and of particular concern that is new is, you know, they have entered into a new phase of defueling. It's a destructive phase, so they'll be taking pipes apart and breaking down concrete in order to, like, I guess, sop up the fuel that has gotten in the nooks and crannies of this old facility. And the plan basically is to burn off whatever residual fuel that they can't absorb. And so
that's been discarded. That is not true. Somebody put that out there on the news, that guy up in DC, and he spoke wrongly.
Okay, well, that's good. All right, so they won't be setting it on fire.
No,
Okay.
they won't be setting it on fire.
Okay. But there are nonetheless off-gassing and air quality concerns related to the destructive defueling of the facility. Go ahead, Lacey.
Okay, first thing I'd like to do is give an update on the needs of residents that are still living with the contaminated water. And unfortunately, one piece of that update is that their needs remain the same. Nothing has changed since 2021. I think a lot of the public may think that this is over, but for the people who are in the homes, it's just another day. They still have sheens on their water, they still have health effects from the water, and so their needs are the same. They do not have access to clean water. They need clean water. One update I have is that since the last meeting, residents have told me that they have been denied water when they requested just a few cases of water while they waited for their test results. This has been an ongoing problem. At this point, the water should be offered to everyone. At the minimum, people who are calling in to request, but that is still not happening. I have been told that some families are getting offered water, not everyone. It seems to be just luck of the draw whether you get water or not. If you do, it's not enough. It's not enough to take a bath, it's not enough to cook for a family of 4, or whatever your situation is, it is not enough. So clean water remains a pressing need. Another need that unfortunately remains is that people are still not getting their test results. I have spoke with a community member that spoke up at the last meeting, and the Navy promised that immediately after that meeting she would get test results. I spoke with her right before this meeting started. She still has no test results for her home. She's been offered excuse after excuse, delay after delay. The fact remains she still doesn't have results for her house. So still not able to get results. An update, and this is a new need. Over the past few weeks, a lot of community members have reached out to me and asked me, what phase are we in? How are we going to be notified if our backyards or our homes are going to be affected by the plume of, the air quality? Well, is there a vent in my backyard? We still don't know. We don't know whose backyard the vents are in. We don't know how they're going to be notified. We cannot inform the public because we have not been informed. So that's terrifying to not know. What are you going to do? Are you going to take your family and get out of the homes? Well, you don't know. You don't know when it's coming. What I do know is that I went to a home on Hickam, and while I was there, I could smell just nauseating mothballs, okay? Naphthalene. Horrendous. In the backyard. And the little PAO representative from the Navy was there just lying to the families. She was telling them, there's never been a spill in the environment. Don't worry, your kids can't be harmed. I'm like, no ma'am, they drained your water tank into your backyard. There's fuel in your grass. There's fuel in your, I cannot continue to emphasize how many lies are still being told to this day, and I have no other word to describe that. We all know at this point there's been a lot of environmental, it's a huge aspect of this problem. So I don't know what else, there's just no other way to describe that. So these are the current needs.
Thank you very much. Do you guys have any other questions or comments on these lines? Do you want to talk about your air quality concerns? Go ahead.
Just to make a comment about the water, this is 2024. We have families that don't have enough water. So according to the EPA statistics, each American needs 82 gallons of water a day per person. So when the Navy shows up and gives them a case of water for 5 people, that is not enough. And there is, again, like I said, I mentioned before, people have begged for the Navy to just care. Care enough to make sure that they have enough water so that they can bathe, they can cook, and they'll have drinking water. So I'm like lazy, I can go on and on about this stupid water. Air quality. We have asked 14 specific questions about air quality before the degassing of the vents of the tanks. And our concern at the time was they were talking about doing this this incineration of the fuel sludge or portions of it. And so I believe the Department of Health put an end to that, but I'm not sure. But the questions we asked primarily were, what things are you going to do before you ventilate or degas the tanks? I don't want to wait until somebody at Salt Lake is starting to smell fuel oil. They can control what they're going to discharge. They're going to make sure what they discharge is clean and is not going to contaminate our environment or create a combustible environment where all of a sudden we have a fire up at Red Hill. So all of these questions were asked, they were bounced around. I knew we weren't going to get a response, so I sent those questions to every one of the district representatives. I have not heard back from any of them. I sent them to the Department of Health, and we just recently found on the Department of Health website a list of some of the questions that were answered somewhat by the Navy. The preventive measures, like what things are you going to do to make sure you don't discharge something into the environment that's going to cause harm, and then the second part of it is, what are the emergency procedures? How are you going to notify people ahead of time? And then there was a part of that notification procedure that included what kind of monitoring are you going to be doing to confirm to us that you're not discharging contaminants into the air. We still don't have answers to those questions.
Thank you. Okay. Susan, go ahead, and then Keone.
Oh, do you want to go first? Okay. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to echo Walter that we have a lot of unanswered questions. And in fact, at the last meeting, you know, we were asking the Navy, yeah, how would you notify people? And obviously we can't trust them to notify as it's happening, as we know with the water samples, right? And so we were suggesting, and the technology's been out there for years, an app where we could be connected, or anybody could be connected to air quality monitors. So if we saw a spike, we would be empowered to make the decision to say, hey, I'm going to take my family out of here for a while, or I'm going to move out for a while. Because to trust the Navy to let you know what's going on is ridiculous. They've shown that they're not to be trusted. Thanks. Oh, and the other thing is, this repeated pattern of delaying, not getting us answers. And right now we really want these answered because they're going to be starting some of this, these procedures that may be off-gassing and vapor intrusion. They just keep, you know, if they do answer them, it's after the fact, right? I mean, it's after we had a lot of things while they were doing the defueling that we never got answered. Now the defueling is over. So it's just, again, another pattern of their delay, not answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Keone?
Yeah, I just want to go on the record again to say that no one should be living in these homes until the water is absolutely safe, which will not occur until all the water pipes are completely removed and replaced. And the fact that the Department of Defense is refusing to even warn or disclose to any family members that are moving into these homes within the Navy's water line that there was a discharge that did occur that is still not safe, and they continue to go through this cycle over and over again. Again, it's mid-2024. We shouldn't be begging for water bottles, you know, for military families to take a shower in the yard. Are you kidding me here? You know, this is why the Navy isn't here, because they have nothing to say. This is unbelievable. You know, again, what they're doing is they're risking the life of every single person on this island. They need to be disclosing what happened to every new incoming family, and they need to condemn all these homes. You need to condemn all these homes and replace the water lines. And those families don't get to relocate, they need to leave our island. We're talking deoccupation. The families here the troops here need to go home and stay home, because what you're doing is you're threatening all of us, and we do not accept it. I personally refuse to go behind any closed door and speak with these individuals. You need to face us in the public, and you need to go home.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I have thought about this in terms of like, how can we reduce the harm? And I've said this publicly before, like, I'm trying to be realistic, like, are they gonna take every military person off this island? Like, how can we, I'm like, well, they're probably not. You know, that's the reality. So how can we reduce the harm if they don't replace the pipes, if they don't condemn the housing? And the only thing I could think of is if we made Hawaii non-accompanied orders. That means the dependents do not come with the spouse. And even though, you know, the military is, you know, friendly to women being in the military, it's a reality that's still mostly men. Okay, that means it's still mostly spouses that are women, and you've got children. Women and children are more vulnerable to toxins. They have smaller bodies, and therefore they get larger doses. So when these giant tall men are up there saying, I'm buying an ice shower in it, yeah, but you're not a baby. You're not a woman. Okay, so sit down, shut up, and listen to the people and their reality. But from a harm reduction, I'm thinking, like, just don't bring the most vulnerable people.
Thank you. It's also my understanding.
If I may, Marty?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mindy.
As a service member and as an impacted family and as a mother, I 100% back what Keone is saying. I believe that we have not been good stewards not only of the profession, but of the environment and of the people of Hawaii. And as a service member, I wholeheartedly apologize for that, even though it's not my place to. But, and to Lacey's point, the military did not take care of not only my family, but thousands of families who ended up in the ER. We were denied testing. We continue to be denied medical testing. We continue to be denied adequate medical care. And so I 100%, it is the military's way of life to be separated from family at times. That is an unfortunate reality for military families. And I do believe that to lessen the footprint in Hawaii, because we understand that we don't need as much of a footprint there. We understand that we have not respected the island in the way that we should, in the environment and the people there. And also, we have not, as we've stated many times, we have not even taken care of our own military families, and Lacey and I can attest to that. So I 100% support what you were saying, Keone, and also obviously back Lacey for the impacted families with that as well.
Single military men have a history of being unsafe.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
I just mentioned earlier, this is 2024, and Keone, I agree with you 100%. We toss around some words, and I think we should think carefully. We're poisoning people, and we casually mention it. It's the Navy's got a drinking water system, they're poisoning people. Who would have thought that we would be sitting here talking nonchalantly about the fact that we're poisoning women and children every day, and we're not able to address it. We're not able to give them regular water. And we talk about the protection of our water source, and for me, it's the protection of our land, our water sources, and our future generations, like I mentioned before. But when we talk about unaccompanied tours or other areas like to replace the housing or replace the piping, the dollar figure starts coming up. Unaccompanied tours is going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars a year, hundreds of millions. And so our politicians and our leaders may not want to hear all of that, but maybe that should be the word from the public, is we need to either get up there and provide for our people, whether they're military families or not, they're people. And so if we're not able to do that, then we should have them go home and go to unaccompanied tours and let the military figure out how to handle the rest of their duty.
It's also my understanding from the Department of Health that in response to the air quality concerns that we raised at the last meeting in March, that they have required the Navy to put in additional air quality monitoring and air quality protections. And we don't know what those are yet. The expectation is that we will know what they are before whatever actions might risk the air quality are taken. But because Navy's not here, we can't get confirmation of that. But when we do find out exactly what those additional protections are imposed by the Department of Health, we'll post them on the CRI website. Sorry, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah. Is Jamie Simic online?
Yeah, she's on Zoom.
Is she? Oh,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to, she found some reports from the Department of Health online, just reams and reams. I couldn't even go through all of it yet. I'm working on it. But they're well aware that there are hazards in vapors. Here I'm looking at a report, the field investigation of the chemistry and toxicity of TPH in petroleum vapors, implications for potential vapor intrusion hazards. This was dated back in 2012. So they are well aware, they took some samples, they're well aware that this is a big issue. So no one can say, the Department of Health and the Navy can't say, oh, we don't know what to expect. It's like, you know that there's a hazard there, and we should hold them accountable.
Thank you. All right, any other conversation on the air quality concerns? Okay.
One last question. Do
yeah,
we
go
know,
ahead.
sorry,
Okay.
do we know, listening to the Water Commission meeting the other day, obviously the Navy is on a pause to be able to move forward with this next phase because the Department of Health wants some more information on their plan for air quality. Have we talked to the Department of Health? Has anyone got anything from Kathy O or her team, what they're waiting for?
No, there's supposed to be a letter that's being transmitted to the Navy about the air quality monitoring requirements and additional protections. And the Department of Health staff said that they would send it to us when it goes out. So I was hoping I would get it before this meeting, but I haven't. And we'll post it as soon as we do.
I would just like to highlight too that that whole stall is a testament to the community raising those concerns and the CRI. So I just would like to highlight that we are making an impact, and I greatly appreciate those who spoke out and raised those concerns, because this is a matter of public health and safety, not only as we've highlighted for military families, but the community at large who will be breathing in that stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. Ilima, go ahead.
Mahalo. I really think that this is an important discussion. And the reason why I think it's pretty obvious is that if anybody has visited the state capitol, there's a sign on the wall in the parking lot underneath the capitol that actually asks motorists not to sit in their cars because of the fumes from the gasoline. So if the state capitol, if our politicians know, if dads know, whoever runs the parking lot knows that the fumes can be hazardous to your health, and actually I think it's deadly. Something about the sign is kind of ominous. I do have a photo somewhere, but anyone can take a look at it. So this is not a new thing, that the fumes could be not just bad for your health, but lethal to individuals. So I just wanted to add that, because that's something that's been on the walls for years. It's so obvious, it's like a no-brainer. Mahalo.
Thank you. All right, anything else on this? All right, we can move on to the next agenda item on information sharing. Okay, so we'll do an update from Susan on the question spreadsheet, which I'm sure no one's going to be surprised. Spoiler. And then also an update on our FOIA requests, and then a discussion about the Navy website, which we have been mad about for a while. Go ahead, Susan.
Oh yeah, so as it stands, we have 327 outstanding questions. About 147 have been answered, but maybe more than half of those not to our satisfaction. So as you recall, or maybe you don't, in December we were very frustrated because, if they had answered these questions all along, there wouldn't be this many outstanding. And so we gave them a deadline in December and said, hey, if you don't answer some of these questions, we're going to start to do FOIAs, Freedom of Information Acts. And so December 23rd, I did several, and I know a couple of the other members of the CRI did them. And we got this nice little kind of a receipt. Thank you for visiting FOIA.gov, the government central website for FOIA. Okay, this is December 23rd, the latest ones, right? And so here comes, April, and we have not heard anything. And so I called the name on the on the little receipt here, and I said, hey, I have this FOIA in front of me. It's been assigned a number. This is the date it was sent. And this would be funny if it wasn't so serious. He tried to look up the numbers. He couldn't find them. And the explanation he gave me was from September 30th through January 2024, FOIA.gov got disconnected from the Navy's military website. He said FOIA.gov is a Department of Justice website, and we're the Navy, and so all of those FOIAs got lost. So we resubmitted them, and I got some receipts, and this person also told me, well, really it would be quicker if you go to www.securerelease.us, and that'll go directly, to the military. And so he said, okay, well, I found your ones that you redid in April, and now they're on the Navy's securerelease.us website. They've been assigned a number, and this was April 4th. And again, I've heard nothing. So this has been a huge frustration. Usually they have to act on FOIAs, within a certain amount of days. And so, we really thought this was going to get us some information. And it's just been another frustration, but we were going to keep at it. The other thing is, for a FOIA, you have to be asking for documents. You can't ask a question the way, we were hoping the CRI could ask the Navy questions and get an answer and then go from there. So it's just kind of been one thing after another. So for those of you wondering why didn't we do FOIAs, we're trying and we are doing them. We're just not getting much of anywhere. Thank you.
I just wanted to give an update on the FOIA I submitted. Mine, unfortunately, was also part of the lost FOIA, whatever. I did resubmit, and then this time I got the response that says it's been placed in the complex processing line. In unusual circumstances, an agency can extend the 20 working day limit to respond. We will require more than 30 working days to respond. So.
Welcome to the black hole. All right. Anything else on the FOIAs or the questions? All right. We wanted to talk a little bit about the website, which continues to be labeled Safe Waters, despite Emma Barnett promising that they would change the name because it is misleading. And I think this might be a good opportunity for Susan. Do you want to present the graphs that you made based on the website and maybe walk us through some of that? Okay, thank you. Yeah, there you go, right on. One moment while those slides get pulled up.
Got me riled up with all the talking. It's like, oh.
Yeah, so here, you can take this mic and we can go to the screen.
Oh, you want me to go up there?
No.
Open to need it and hold it close. Hold it close to your mouth.
I always like to have fun with their data, so the titles just give me the drive to look. And I always make sure that it's unsafe waters. One day they'll change it. Okay, so next slide, please. When Lacey and I were at the website, the workshop, and we were trying to pull all the data for Ohana Nui Circle, we were kind of having a little bit of a problem because we had never tried that before. So I got home, and of course, it did work. The way we were trying it was actually giving us all of Ohana Circle, but it was showing it up in the data. So we didn't have to click all the squares. So this is what you get. Now they keep saying there aren't any clusters, but if you look at this, and you know what a cluster is, and I'm not talking about that kind of cluster. This is a cluster, July through 8. This is a cluster, October through November. And then we had I don't know what they define a low level of TPH, but they don't know what their low level really is, because you all know that these are individual data points. So these are all, these ones here, they're detections of diesel. But these, right here, these two add up together, so that's diesel plus oil, diesel plus oil. So they were having high detections. But for some other reason, they convinced Chris Waldron to lie. So we've got 205 here and 191. And the next slide is going to show you the addresses. That's all not this one, the one before that, yeah. So this is, how many streets are on Ohana Nui Circle? I don't know. But you can almost tell by this that there was something happening in 2023, January to December, all over Ohana Nui Circle, regardless of if they're small, because we still had the TPH, diesel, and oil showing up. So this is what is an example of a pattern. Okay? That's what I look for. I look for patterns, and I don't know how I'm gonna find a pattern. I tell Susan sometimes I dream about them at night, get on the computer and start doing this kind of stuff pops up. But because they don't look at the data like this, you can't see what you don't know. But now you can see what I know. Now the next slide is just going to be the last data that was presented, so January through February 2024. And I even did a breakdown to show you what zones these things were falling in, okay? I'm getting better at this to make it for the public. So those are all the zones. These are the streets in the different zones. So right here is Stovall Circle. Now we're not supposed to see any TPH anymore because they're quenching. It's gone. It's not supposed to be there. Or they're just going to start looking at the other analytes because they want me to go away. That's the only thing I can think of, okay? That's why I keep doing this, because I want to drive the point home that regardless of what you've said, the data does not match up with what's coming out of your mouth. Okay, so then I showed like in D2 and F2, we had the highest points. But these little ones, whatever they want to call them, these are important too, because it's showing that almost every one of these streets had something happening between January and February, just 1 month. And there were 54 detections. Now, if you go back to the previous slide, I think there were 61 detections for the whole year just at Ohananui Circle. So now we go forward again. We got 54 in just a month. And I'm not sure what the next slide is, but it's something to do with this. You can, are there any questions here?
Can you just read out what zone D2 is, the second line?
Zone D2.
On the right.
Isn't that nice how I did this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Under 54 detections.
Oh, okay.
That second line.
D2 is actually right here. Hale, Nakoa, Officer Field, and Onizuka.
I guess I'm talking about the elementary school.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can you
right
just call
there.
that out, that there's
That
elementary
is
school?
the one that EPA knew about and didn't tell the CRI about until like a week after.
Yeah. So
that's
Hickam
the
Elementary
school.
School had a TPH reading of 320.
Yeah, 0.8.
Yeah. How many elementary schools are on the Navy's water line? Is there 13?
Oh gosh, there's like 13.
There's 13.
There's something like that.
Let's just
Yeah.
say that again out loud. Okay.
You just didn't happen to be at my presentation when I did all the schools, which I think was at the FTAC.
Can you explain on the chart itself, Hickam Elementary, you have the TPH 320,
Yeah.
whatever. But to the left of it, it says 262.
Okay, because you added up diesel plus oil equals 320. Okay, so anytime I have D plus O, I thought I've talked about it before, but maybe not. That's diesel plus oil. If you just see these, they're diesel. There are a few, like 3 that are oil, but I didn't think that was important. What I think is important is that they said they came up with a new process so that they were going to see less of what they were seeing of the TPH that's not JP5, that's not petroleum hydrocarbons, that's not whatever you want to say. And this is the time period.
No, it's going forward that they're going to do that. Because this data was what made them say they want to do the process.
Were you at the FTAC?
No.
Okay, so I transcribed the whole thing word for word. They started in January.
Obviously they didn't, because they're complaining that the Hickam Elementary sample was not, what's the word? Quenched. So
Exactly.
I think it's going forward from now. It's not January, February.
Yeah, but see, you got to understand that when I do transcriptions, I do word for word so I can shove it back in their face. So when they are saying 2 different things, and I'm listening to 2 different meetings, like the commission on Tuesday, and them saying different things about this whole philosophy, if you don't transcribe the stuff, you cannot make them understand that they're saying 2 different things. So They say one thing at one meeting, they say another thing at another meeting. They're not watching what they're saying, and they're not paying attention to who's listening. Next slide. The slide before it where it said January to February, that's why you asked the question. I made a mistake, it's February through March. This I'm showing by date. The one before it, can you click back, Rosalie? Because I know I confused everybody. This is supposed to be February through March. The time that you're talking about. Okay? My mistake, and I'm allowed them. So, then we go here, these are the dates. So they don't look at their dates, but I'm looking at the dates because I'm looking for
Patterns.
And that's what we're seeing here. Okay? This is just 1 month, 54 detections. Does anybody have any questions?
That's for all the zones?
Yeah.
Everything?
Yeah. If you go to the previous slide, right here, all the zones that had detections.
So can you show that graph again, the other one?
The last one?
Yeah, the last one. So I think what I want to comment on is, and again, half the time they keep fiddling with this data and telling us different things. One of the things that we're seeing up here is diesel and oil. What's
That's
missing
diesel
is
and
gasoline.
oil. Diesel and oil, diesel and oil, diesel and oil.
Exactly. What's missing is gasoline.
They're
So-
not, they're not detecting gasoline.
No,
Gasoline,
they're not counting it, because on the chromatogram, there's a big peak of gasoline, but they don't count it. They're only counting the hydrocarbon group in diesel oil and JP5.
okay,
so
but
they say
you're,
there's no
on
JP5.
chromatogram, they did not show oil. They only showed gasoline and diesel, which I would really like to do a workshop on the FTAC presentation by Waldron, because it's an eye-opener if you can read it as it's transcribed and the words that they're saying, and then I matched it up with the slide deck. So when you're reading that, you can open up the slides and know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I understand what, you can't go by Chris Waldron, because he contradicted himself throughout the whole thing. I'm just saying that the data that we're looking at, they did not use a gasoline standard. So the petroleum products that have to be added, even though it says TPHG, TPHD for diesel, TPHO for oil, they don't show the gasoline because they didn't compare it to the gasoline standard. One of the questions we asked was, show us the raw data that shows all of the petroleum products for all of the different hydrocarbon groups, not just the ones that they want to show. So in the chromatogram, it's just the ones they want to show. Again, they slanted the data, but again, your graph is exactly correct. It's showing us a trend, and what are we doing about that? What are we doing now, today, to prevent those numbers to go down so people don't get sick?
One other comment, and when he's talking about gasoline, that's because JP5, when it enters the water, becomes gasoline, right?
Some of it is absorbed.
The earlier data on unsafe waters has the gasoline showing up. But when you start getting later into the data, you can't select gasoline anymore. But early on, you have the choice of gas, oil, and diesel. And you will find the gas. And I'm only gonna ever use their data because it's the only thing I can fight them with. I have to take the data that they're showing us and make it real life for you all, but also when I get the chance to say something to them, I can point it out based on their own data. And this is the way I do it. I'm not stopping with TPH because I know that they're trying to throw us on a distraction. That's just what they do.
All right, any other questions?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say, I said it before and I'll say it again. Thank you, Susan. And this is the work that the Navy and the EPA should be doing, looking for patterns and then taking a deep dive into these addresses, especially that one, was it Honolulu Circle?
Yes.
They could do that if they really wanted to find out what was going on. But I feel like the Navy is trying to do the opposite. You know, they show all of this data and you just kind of get overwhelmed with it. But Susan Bacola Davis knows what to do with it and sees these patterns. And I just wish the EPA would do something with this. The Navy, whatever, but at least the EPA, my gosh, thank you.
I do think I'm doing the right thing, but if anybody has any ideas to throw out at me, I'm perfectly willing to use their data with your questions or queries.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just get curious when you start seeing this thing, well, what about this? I'll do it.
Melody has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm seeing what, a 320, so.
Yeah, that's Hickam.
That's
Elementary school.
Okay, but that's in excess of the EALs of 266.
Yes.
Yes.
But they later said it was wrong.
Oh.
It was
Because of the
unvalidated.
quenching business.
Yeah, this is the,
Unvalidated,
Yeah.
validated,
right.
That's
whatever.
why they're not sitting here.
Exactly.
Well, it's concerning, it's so much higher than the EALs,
Which was too high anyway.
which is too high anyway.
Well, now the
And then
Department
dealing
of
with
Health
children.
is agreeing to get rid of 266 and look at other stuff. And that even makes you feel,
Yeah.
because you won't know what they're measuring until they tell us what they're measuring. So all I can do is this.
Yeah.
And then we just determine what we do or what we think about the data and understand that it's not all gone.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, and that's, I mean, you did really, really good, and that's if this data is true data. So again, going back to the quenching, are these true numbers, or are they being taken down 50%? Are they being taken down at 0%?
What's
or should
missing?
they to be times 2 or 3?
What's
So-
missing here?
Yeah,
Oil. There's no oil in any of these except for these.
Yeah.
That's what started me going, oh, yeah, okay, I know what your quenching did. It didn't do what you thought it was gonna do, which was gonna get rid of all of this. But they didn't know that we would recognize that it just got rid of almost all of the oil.
Okay, wait, Mandy has a question online.
Oh, hi, Mandy, yes?
Susan, first of all, thank you so much. And I just have to ask for the record, when the Navy tries to discredit you or whatever, are you wearing latex gloves when you come up with these statistics?
No, they're nitrile. They're nitrile.
Are you pumping gas?
Nitrile.
There?
Thank you so much, Susan.
Okay, aloha.
Aloha. Thank you. Very good. So we got one question asking about Hickam Elementary School, so I just want to make sure that everyone is aware. So in February 26th, there was a high reading of TPH at 320 parts per billion, one of those numbers, and at Hickam Elementary School.
On February 26th.
On February 26th. And the principal was notified but told that not to worry about it because after they went through their quenching process, the level was much lower. And so then only after the news covered it, covered this news, the principal then notified the parents that this had occurred. Past that, I don't think there's been any other changes at the school that we know of.
The only thing I saw was that they switched out a fixture in one of the classrooms, because that's another one of their go-to methods for fixing a widespread contamination event, is just saying, oh, well, the place where that was detected, it was obviously sink faucet. So we're just gonna change out the faucet, flush it a billion times, retest it, and look, it's gone. It's like, yeah, it's over in the classroom next door now, so why did you switch out the faucet? Yeah.
Good job. Good job.
So the other thing that's unclear to me is that the EPA told some people, not many people, on February 26th, whatever the date was, we don't know when the sample was taken. Because there's a period of time between when it's taken and the test results come in.
Oh,
And we
I
have
thought
no idea, if that's a day, a week, a month. We don't know that.
I thought the sample was taken on the 26th.
What's that?
The sample date from their data is February 26th.
So that's when it was collected.
We don't know why they didn't tell us sooner, or tell y'all sooner. And it could have been, they could use the excuse of, well, we had to wait to validate the results.
So my understanding, I can't remember the date that was given, but the email that you got from Amy,
Who's at the EPA?
EPA, she provided the date upon which they got the result.
March 8th.
Okay, so it was, 12 days approximately between, which is a long time
No.
to get a test result.
I'm an encyclopedia.
That's not right?
No. So the long-term monitoring plan and the course of action that they identify when you have an exceedance that goes above 266, within 24 hours of getting the results, they have to notify the Department of Health. And at the same time, they notify EPA. So from what I understand, they took the sample and it was 2 days, about 2 days before they got the results. But then they notified the Department of Health within the 24 hours, but then they sent it to another lab to do the revalidation. So they had to get a validated lab to validate what the validated lab said. And then that took another 5 or 6 days. And by the time we got told, it was like 8 or 10 days later. But that long-term monitoring plan is dead now. So they're working on a new plan.
Okay, and on that note, I think it's time for us to move to public testimony at 7 o'clock. I think maybe we start with the people who are on Zoom first, and then if there's anybody in the public who'd like to testify, you can either come up to the edge of the table here, use one of these mics, or if there's something you want to look at on the screen, you can go up to the screen. Okay, so who's first on Zoom? Meredith? Go for it.
Hi, can you hear
Hi.
me guys?
Yes, nice to see you. Thank you.
Hi, good to see you guys too. Number one, I'm tired, not only because it's midnight here, but I'm just tired of running around in circles, aren't you guys? It was really tiring to go through the BS that was the end of 2021 and our lives since then, but man, it's exhausting. But we're still here, right? I just really am tired of also hearing about chlorine. There are samples, pre-chlorinated samples from the Waiawa shaft that show TPH. So that just can't be used as an excuse. I also am really frustrated that we still talk a difference between groundwater samples and drinking water samples. Obviously I don't get the full concepts of everything, but I know how the Safe Waters website is divided, environmental versus drinking water. But thankfully, thanks to some of the CRI members providing DOH has a draft environmental hazard evaluation document that they have a draft of right now. I believe most of it was written by Dr. Roger Brewer. It mentions that groundwater situated Mauka or inland of a UIC line, an underground injection control line. Don't really know what that is, but I found a map. Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility is Mauka of that, the groundwater. It classifies as a current or potential drinking water source, and it should be treated as such. So our groundwater samples that we see in that website still matter. And if you go and look, I mean, it's just off the charts. We're still getting monitoring wells of 1,200 parts per billion. I understand that we get our water from Waiawa shaft, but we don't understand the plume. So we really have to keep asking those questions and not forget about groundwater samples. I do just want to give support to making comments on that draft by the Department of Health is due by May 1st, and we don't even hear about these kinds of things. We're not presented with the opportunity to make comments about this. So I do encourage people, if you're able to share the link, it's very hefty reading. So maybe if you could just kind of skim over it and just make a comment saying, hey, I read it and I care. it is due by May 1st, so I do hope that someone shares that. I don't know if there's a question there, but anyway, thanks guys.
Thank you very much, Meredith. That was very useful. And we will post a link to the what is it? The Environmental Hazards Evaluation Draft Report.
EHE, let's add another acronym in.
Yay!
And basically, from my understanding after reading it, is that, yet again, we have to understand all of the chemicals of potential concern, which are all of them in jet fuel, to understand how to update our EAL. And basically, it's kind of just kicking the can down the road again. Because we don't understand what was all in it, we can't update it fully.
Thank you, Meredith.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead. Wait.
Thank you for that comment and that reminder. So for everybody in the public, go to that website and just ask 2 questions, or basically ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, if they're going to give you an environmental action level, what that means is you accept amount of hazardous materials in your environment, whether it's in your soil, your water, or your air. They're saying, we can poison you with this level, and we calculated that the risk of 1 in a million is only going to get hurt or is going to get sick. That's what an EAL is. It's risk-based. It's a calculation. Is there a comparison to health dose in relationship to health? No. So the way these EALs or this environmental hazard evaluation is written, the Department of Health is free to develop these EALs on their own and be able to publish them. And they have been doing it since 2007. So if you get, it's a thick document, it's very complicated, but basically if you would just make a comment that said, 1, I don't want an EAL, I don't want any hazardous materials in my environment. If you feel that you have to do it, then I want to see the comparison with that number, whether it's 5 parts per billion or whatever it is, and tell me at what level will I see health effects? And give me that data, the studies, the reports, and that kind of stuff. For petroleum hydrocarbons, there isn't any. You will hear EPA often say, TPH is not a regulated contaminant. You know why? We don't want petroleum products in our water. It's not supposed to be there. So when we start talking about 206 parts per billion or 50 parts per billion, we're telling you, you have to accept that. You have to accept the poison we're giving you. So comment, as many people as possible, comment to it, and let the state know. We're not going to just accept these environmental action levels blindly.
Just real quick, a comment on that as well. So to me, an environmental action level is recognizing that there's poison in our water, and we're all playing Russian roulette. It's like, okay, who's the 1 in 100,000 or whatever, who's going to get sick and die? I mean, it's Russian roulette with our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. All right, anyone here in person wants to testify? Oh, wait.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Jake. Okay, so we've got Susan and then Shannon. Go ahead.
Do you want to give me a microphone? Is it Susan me or Susan?
Susan you.
Okay.
The pleasure.
She's the same.
Yeah.
First of all, to make this clear, I respect every one of your opinions, decisions, and whatever. And I think that you're always doing what's best for Hawaii and what's best for the people. I have a question, and you don't have to answer it, but you need to think about it. If it's true that what the EPA is saying, that the Navy will not come back to the table unless you mediate, what are you going to do? Because we don't see anybody, we're not going to get any information, and I can't do a slam dunk, and that's bothering me. Okay, thank you. And don't answer it, just think about it.
Yeah, it's not an insignificant consequence. Jen, you want to testify?
I actually just had some questions. So watching the Water Commission meeting, is this on?
Yeah, you just have to hold it closer.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So some things to think about. So they removed the HFLF concentrate from the fire suppression system. That has to be disposed of in an incinerator mainland, most likely. So there needs to be a sample if we want to know how toxic is it. I know it's supposed to be the environmentally friendly C6 C6 kind. It was C8 is more toxic kind, but until it's tested, I don't think it was ever tested when it was inserted in the system. So before it's incinerated, maybe recommend asking for a sample to be kept and tested. And then they also mentioned a P716 Milcon project for water filtration system. So I bring this up just because that'll most likely go to a contractor to bid and build, and all the systems have issues at Red Hill. And there was a DODIG report that was just released, I think a few days ago, about all the defense fuel support points having issues. It's not just Red Hill. So, and the DLA Energy is having issues because they don't have the expertise. This is all in the report, so it's not my opinion. They don't have the expertise to manage all these contractors and all these projects. So that's another question. Who's going to manage this to make sure that it's installed and built correctly and doing what it's supposed to be doing? Going back to the tank cleaning process, it sounds like they're already underway to get 2 tanks cleaned at a time, 9 months at a time. So they either, I don't know if 2 tanks have already been broken open and gas-freed. That's a question to ask, but it sounds like every 3 months the tanks are going to be prepped and for cleaning, which means they're going to be broken open and gas-freed. So every 3 months there's going to be 2 tanks opened, and then so 2, and then 4, then 6. How many? Like 8 in a year. So that's kind of frightening to know that 250-foot tall tanks by 100 feet wide tanks full of gas are going to be expelled to the environment. So hopefully they have filters and the state has permits and or max emissions on a year or month, or not sure how they're doing it. I'd like to see that. Also with the tank cleaning, they'll be using I think like pressure washers, simple green to once these tanks are open and essentially wash them down. So they have to put some, that all turns into hazmat. If it's water and touches the fuel that was in the tanks or simple green or whatever was in that tank, normally I think the tank is broken open from the bottom, so that's another spill hazard. So is there secondary containment? We all know that that's not watertight space down there, so that's a concern. What is being done with the sludge? Where is it being stored? That's all fuel. I mean, it's fuel water mixture, but it's all fuel. So it's not, the issues aren't over, the potential for spill isn't over. So I think those are most of my questions. And where are they storing the hazmat, inside the facility, outside the facility? Is it contained? Will it be washed out with water, if it rains, things like that. So thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, Christina, did you want to say something?
I'm Christina Bear. I represent 7,500 people who were impacted at Red Hill in November of 2021. Our case is going to trial on April 29th, and I just want to invite you all to come. On behalf of the impacted families, they have felt so embraced by this community, and it has been, for me, just an honor to be part of this movement. And I know it's going to continue for generations to come, unfortunately, decades. But our team has played a small part of it to focus on November 2021. But I also want to encourage you that it has made progress. The government admitted liability, which means that this is a damages trial. That means that the impacted families are the prevailing parties going into this trial. That is your win. That's this community's win. And last week, we were able to put on the docket all of the evidence that we have on this case. And one of the things I've been most passionate about is bringing truth to what happened here. And I'm not going to stop that even after the trial is over and the case is over. But know that it's there. It's on the docket for everyone to see. And the government is continuing to minimize, and they're literally taking the position in the case that there's not enough fuel in the water to have made anybody sick, even in November 2021. I think that's outrageous. All of you do too. And we are going to bring truth and accountability. And at trial, we're going to be showing why that's not true. So we invite you to come to be part of it, because the United States poisoned families, and I don't use that word lightly. They poisoned families, and they poisoned the land, and there are small things to make it right. I know we don't have all the information. I know that the government's still hiding a lot of things. I did not get all the discovery I wanted. There is outstanding an IG report that I just heard about that I don't have, that was disclosed during the course of discovery. It was published during discovery, and I don't have it. But I hope that you get it, and I hope that this story continues and history's on your side. Thank you.
Hey, wait, Christina, can you say again the dates, what time and where to be?
So it is April 29th. People will be gathering on the courthouse steps in a sign waving, probably starting at around 7:30 or so. Then you should start making your way inside at around 8, because we expect it to be crowded. We hope it will be crowded. We have clients flying in from all over the country. And so it's April 29th in the courthouse, federal courthouse downtown. And you can get there starting at 7:30 for sign waving, and then come in at 8:30 or 8:15. The courthouse will be open for the trial. The first 5 days are our witnesses. And so I highly recommend you come for all of it. Come every day. We want to show the media too, who have been invited, and the judge isn't our only audience here. This is about accountability and change, and that's what the law is for. And the law is for enforcing the safety rules in this country. And we need to be better safe than sorry, right? In this case, our clients and the community, you called 911, right? And the good guys never came, and that's what the case is about. So it's your story too, and I'm sorry that I don't have all the information, but I have to go with what I have, and I'm sorry I can only do November 2021, but we're going to take the wins as we get them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, is there any other testimony online? I know we were waiting for Jamie, but I don't think she's back yet.
That's Tara.
Oh, Tara, would you like to testify?
Aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, on the record, well, first of all, again, just mahalo to you all for being there and for always being present and showing up. And just to put on the record that if you can, in your email to them, let them know that they just really need just to replace the piping and replace the line and replace the system.
Yeah.
So basically that, and yeah, that we just got to keep going. So mahalo nui.
Mahalo. All right, if there's no other testimony, I think that sentiment is a good one to end on. Oh, sorry. Tara, go ahead.
I'm curious about with the mediation, with everything that was being stated, is there a willingness on the CRI part to do mediation if it's public and broadcast or available for people to participate in as public community members? Or is the CRI completely opposed? Like, is there an offer for negotiation that is being extended, or is that being considered? Or is it that's my question to the CRI?
Okay, well, I'll start. For me, I'm always up for talking. I mean, I'm Scottish, right? So like that's But I do have some prerequisites and some minimum expectations. One, I don't want to hold up ongoing CRI meetings for a mediation process. That's one thing. I don't want. I want the urgent need for clean water to be delivered to people living on the Navy water lines to be addressed first. I do want it all to be public. I'm really worried about what happens when we go behind closed doors. Like, yikes. Yeah, not down with that. And I think, at least for right now, those are the main things, my bottom lines that come up for me. But, you know, the rest of us all have other takes and opinions on it. If you want to share now, if you want, go for it.
I mean, this has already been said. What the Navy resents the most is us setting the agenda. They want to set the agenda and unilaterally veto things. That's what they want to mediate over.
Yeah.
So to me, there's no point in mediating because, and that's because that's what they're going to demand. We're going to say no, and they'll say, okay, we're not going to continue these meetings. They want to set the agenda. That's what this is all about. They want to dictate the narrative. So there's no point in it from my perspective. I mean, I agree with Marty and what others have said about other issues, but the bottom line is it's all about control, as I think Walter or somebody said.
It was Mandy. Okay, Lacey?
I made a little chart and very basic. I just put, what if we accept, you know, what if we decline, what if we accept on conditions? And, you know, I already said this as well, but if we accept it or decline, the outcome's pretty much the same for the impacted families, because the Navy's not doing anything either way. If they were, they would have already done it 2.5 years ago. They'd be doing it today. They would have showed up to this meeting. I mean, it's just clear that the inaction is going to continue no matter what we do. The only outcome the only difference I could ever see or imagine is if we accepted conditionally. And that would be, sure, if we accept it, you do this. And it would be a big ask. Replace the pipes, keep the dependents home, don't bring them here. I mean, a big ask. That's my personal thoughts. But the other thing I'd like to add is that I personally think that we should consider all of the survey input from the public, so I hope that you all will fill it out and let us know what you think, because ultimately we're here to represent what you think.
I think that I would agree to mediation in a heartbeat. If tomorrow they were able to provide clean water that will not result in health effects to all of the military families, and promise to make sure that that system is always going to be clean and they will protect our land and our resources, all of which I know is unreasonable because they won't do it anyway. But along with that, the mediation, as well as the question about the CRI, they're threatening the CRI. It's a community representative initiative. We're not hired employees. We were elected by the public. So to answer the question that Susan posed, I think if we don't mediate and they decide to, they can't fire us. The member of the public if the public survey says you guys have to disband or you're not going to do that, then fine. Then I can accept that. But I don't think we should bend over backwards and make sure, or let them continue poisoning people, disregarding their health effects, and just their quality of life. So those are the things we cannot allow us to mediate or even to give on.
Other comments?
Yeah, I mean, the Navy needs to remember that they're visitors here, and they have no business dictating anything. As Kanaka Maoli, this battle isn't in this room. You know, since the 2021 spill, Pohokula has been burning, right? Haleakala has been having diesel spilled on its summit. Our fight is Pai'aina wide, and our stance is you go home.
Thank you. On this.
Hello?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead,
agree
Bill.
as well. They had 2 years to do some type of mediation. They had 2 years to do something right for the people. They had 2 years to even donate water. They haven't done anything at all. Why should they have a private meeting amongst us? It should be public, as we were voted by the people to bring transparency. to hold these people accountable for their crimes, which they haven't been held accountable yet. So I'm against any type of private meeting with the people who have done wrong to their own people, to their own military dependents, to their kids. Over 13 schools that we heard on the water lines. There's no concern for the children, so there's no concern for them on my side. They don't get the respect that they want from us. They don't choose when and where they dictate their time. As you can see, they don't show no concern at all. They're not there in person. And once again, you know, many people show up. Even the people that can't show up, they have somebody replacing them. So they could have had people to replace them as well, to be a substitute, right? There's no excuse. So for the mediation part, I'm against the whole private one, but I'm all about talking with people. As long as, like Walter, you know, explained, bring back clean water, ensure that the pipes are done, you know what I mean? Make sure that the water heaters are replaced, everything that they're supposed to do, that's supposed to be right for the people to live. They haven't done nothing at all, so they get nothing from us.
And if you are a naval official and you're scared to face the public, you should turn your uniform in.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Thank you. Okay, we got Mandy online and then Susan.
Listen, talk is cheap, and that's all mediation is, right? It's just a bunch of talk. And Bob, from the very beginning, we knew what the AOC or the ACO said, right? But Bob said, we're gonna meet every month. We'll meet more than once if we want to. That's what they said from the very beginning. We've been down this lane before. We did it before we even kicked this thing off. We talked about what the rules were gonna be, what the ground rules were gonna be, who was gonna set what. We've done this. Talk is cheap. And you know why? Because you're sitting across the table right now with empty seats, right? Empty seats. But to answer your question, Tara, I would not agree to anything unless it was public, period. And again, it's very rich of the Navy to be asking us to do anything when they haven't, when everything that's been asked of them, they have not come through with, starting with the answers to our questions. So I think there will be a lot of things that need to happen before we would agree to anything at this point.
Thank you, Mandy. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah. Personally, I think this is a strategy by the Navy to get rid of the CRI. I think we've been asking them very difficult questions that they don't want to answer. And second, they have so many venues where everything else, they control the agenda. They control where the meetings happen. They control everything. This is the community's only opportunity for us to come up, you know, the community to come up with an agenda, and for the public to actually be able to ask questions, and for impacted families to come to the mic and let us know how they've been suffering. And so I just don't understand why, well, I do understand why the Navy would also want to control us. And again, mediation in front of the public, yes, because we would ask them, again, the tough questions. Why do you want to take away the community representation initiative? Thank you.
Inima?
Mahalo for that, Susan. That's actually my exact sentiment, that really this is a community initiative. This is what we're here for. As far as I'm concerned, we're all part of the CRI, and the reason why is because we're all water users, and I think we all need to be concerned about the health and welfare of ourselves and of the people around us. So, you know, it just makes common sense for us to want to hold the government and the Navy responsible for remediation. At this point, that's really all we have to cope with. We are going to go through many, many years and potentially generations of this EHA. We're going to have to figure out how to cope through it, but there's also going to have to be a lot of money coughed up, because it's going to cost a lot of money to do the remediation, to do the testing that, as Marty said, has not even been invented yet. We don't even have the technology to do everything we need to do. They've so messed up the INA. So the military was asked back in October of last year, I think, to please move each of the families that are impacted by this situation. And actually, I asked them not to give anyone a choice. I didn't want to give anyone a choice for two reasons. One, because sometimes people don't know when they're being poisoned, but they're being poisoned and then they find out way too late. And I didn't want them to be in that situation unwittingly and just to have a lot of bravado and think I'm too big, I can't get sick from this. And the other thing is just common sense also. It is about dollars and cents ultimately. It will cost more money as people get sicker and the expenses of people who are potentially litigants increase. And the pool of litigants could also increase. So, from a fiscal standpoint, I have to be honest, in addition to big concerns about human health and well-being in our INA, we have to think about the costs. Can we afford all of the costs if we don't act now to take urgent measures? So having the military or the Navy specifically be more transparent is vital. And allowing the public to be able to ask questions, allowing these impacted family members to be able to be present is really important. So, again, as Keone indicated, they do need to move the families. The military has been asked as far back as October of 2023 to do it before the end of 2023, and it is now almost May. And they've had many months to do this, but they haven't taken any action, and their decision instead of moving families and then doing remediation, as painful and costly as they think it might be, that was not their option. Their option was just to silence everyone and to basically silence the CRI, because we have been the primary platform for families who are being told, as Lacey mentioned, that they're too emotional. Yes, be emotional. When these things happen, when your child is poisoned, be emotional. Make sure that people take action. Make sure that people realize that this is important, that this is not anything that's just about cultural, awareness. This is about human lives. So this is even transcends, our Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian culture. This is about everybody who lives here. Everybody who lives here is part of this fabric. And we cannot increase the pilina between us if it's being broken down by this poisonous eha. So, thank you to everyone who's here tonight, and please join us on the 29th. I'm going to be there. I'm going to take time off of work to be there, and I hope everyone else will join us for the sign waving. Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo.
Okay, Mandy has her hand raised, and then we have public testimony from Jamie and Chris.
Yeah, just quickly, Alima, I can't wait to see you at court. But, and I can't wait to see all of you guys. But I just have to say, I can't tell you how sick it makes me. Like, can we ask Marty how much money they are paying for this federal mediator? Because what makes me so sick is how much money is being invested in messaging, right? This is all about messaging. When they could take that amount of money and put it into taking care of families, to testing, medical testing. They could put it into giving people clean water. They could put that money in that they're spending on these federal mediators into remediating homes. Like, it just makes me so sick how much money is being pissed away, for a bit lack of better words, into messaging when we can't even get them to remediate homes, to test, to do medical testing, or to give people clean water. Like, I'd love to know what that dollar amount is that they're spending on this federal mediator that no one from the community asked for.
I'm going to add that to our questions for the EPA.
Okay. All right. So, Jamie, you ready to testify?
Aloha, everybody. I'm going to change course yet again after listening to the CRI meeting. First, I want to thank everybody on the CRI and everybody that supports the CRI continues to come and testify over and over and over. This is a direct example of why they want to shut it down, is because they can't control the narrative when individuals such as myself, Mandy, Lacey, Chris Anton, Meredith Wilson, Kat come up and bravely, and then the families that are continuously being affected behind us, and sharing their information on social media, they can silence it there, but they can't silence it here. So I want to give kudos to the CRI for continuing to fight. I want to give kudos to the local community for joining forces with the military, which is the military families, which is historic in of itself, that everybody has come together to share the aloha. As Susan mentioned, and I've been dropping Easter eggs, the Navy's known. They've known for years. and I agree with Lacey on saying, and I've said this before as well, that it should be a geo-bachelor duty station. If I would have known coming back to the island in 2020 that it was contaminated, no matter how much I love it, I would not have chosen to bring my children back and re-expose them. That choice was taken away from me in 2014 and was taken away from me again in 2020. It was also taken away in 2016. Every single time they had the leaks in 2010, 2012, 2013 that culminated into the announcement of the 2014 leaks in the beginning of January. What I'm gonna discuss is I wanted to thank Shannon for her maps and for the depiction of the fuel lines. I've had a theory that I've even shared with the EPA of why there's certain areas that are more severe than others, and I believe it's because of where those fuel lines lead to, as running on top with the water lines or in junction connection areas that transfer or redirect the fuel. If you would see, Susan was asking about, what is it again? The circle. As you see, it's over here on the left. If you come down this way on the map, you can Google Maps if you want to follow along with me. Right across the way is the airport. Honolulu Circle is right in here. Over here is the Hickam CDC. We brought up Hickam Elementary, and these are detections in January of 2024, and they go all the way up into 176 parts per billion. If you look at Hickam Elementary, and the airport is right below there, which I believe is why, and then there's also, let me show you again, there's also a gas station over here. So they're pumping fuel so the military get discounted gas. Here is the Hickam CDC. Right here is Freedom Tower. If you come up a little bit, that's where Hickam Elementary would be, which is behind Freedom Tower. In that, if you look at this map, you will see the road right here. Sorry, I'm having tremors. Behind this road is where they have the shipyard, part of the shipyard. And then over here, just a little bit, is another fuel station that the MPs use. Again, another reason why I believe that there, and if you go further down, then you get to Pearl Harbor, you get to the opening and whatnot. And then if you look at D2, where, again, my house was, and on Susan's map, there was quite a bit at 19th Street, which is right back here. If you come across where my house was, there was a grate that emitted horrendous fumes. It was noted by Captain Paparo and several other high-ranking officials in January, and also, sorry, my tremors are really bad. And also when I was told that the pipeline needed to be replaced, which Erwin also confirmed at the meeting held by the CRI. If you come down here and go directly across, you will find the airport where the president and whatnot flies in. With Honolulu Circle, at the very end of Honolulu Circle is where it connects straight into the Honolulu airport. They've known for a very long time. They've known that the soil is contaminated. They've known that the groundwater is contaminated. When you guys get through some of the documents that I've submitted, it will confirm it. They've known that there have been leaks, pinhole leaks, as they call them, since 2014, leaching into the mountain, into the basalt. 19 of the 20 tanks had fuel underneath of it. And so if it takes 20 years for it to fully get through, we're halfway there, just from those admitted leaks. So I plead with the Navy to do the right thing, sit at these meetings and answer our questions. The reason why they don't want to sit at these meetings is because they can no longer continue the narrative. Too many smart, intelligent and passionate people for the community and the environment and for their families have stepped forward and done the research, and they have brought their heads together in order to fight for Oahu. And we will continue to fight regardless if they want to shut this platform down or control it. I thank all of you again. I plead with everybody to fill out the surveys. I don't know if anybody has seen, but more stuff is coming out regarding people having crystallization on their bowls, on their plates. Somebody was reporting fuel at Missing Man, again, like I reported in 2022. And also in 2020, I was reporting it, not just to my husband, but to others, that something was going on at Missing Man with the fuel and over by the wastewater treatment plant. Thank you, everybody, for standing strong. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Jamie. Hang in there.
We're hanging.
We're hanging.
She's fearless.
Right on. Okay, Chris, are you ready to testify?
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to be pretty quick, not real like personal testimony. That's always too hard. So my thing was going forward with plans. I had a question about how does the state or EPA or the Navy even intend to address this water system in the first place, knowing that they completely service public areas and they are military, and that you pay your water bill to the military, but when a thing like this happens, they technically can't buy a hotel room for you unless you're active duty. So I don't know. There's some legality issues in that they're providing a whole water system to public, just flat out. And that pieces of their puzzle, their water system, has it been addressed that in shutting down that facility and changing or remediating the water system, that they're gonna actually shut off all water systems that aren't specific to military base, and technically give then new water lines only to board a water supply hookup type of thing for all public, and make that a more, clean legality should anything ever happen in the future in water systems, that public have a way to go to a public place and they don't have to fight the stupidity of help with a place that they sent their money to every month. I just don't understand how the system was all created the way it was. And is that going to be addressed at some point? So that's one of my concerns that I would love brought up by you guys. So something to think about.
Thank you, Chris. We'll definitely add it to the list. And yeah, the Department of Health made a point of saying, Kathy Hill made a point of saying at last meeting, how the Navy has a responsibility as a water purveyor to make sure that the water they're providing is clean. And they are not meeting that expectation. And so there should be consequences for that. So, but thank you very much for your testimony, and we'll continue to harp on that. All right.
Thank you.
I think all of the testimony is done and all of the commentary is done. Oh, Meredith had a question about whether the CRI would be open to accepting a mediator as like a
moderator.
A moderator, thank you. A moderator as a way to, as an interim step towards mediation.
No.
Okay, all right. That's right. Thank you, Professor Frankel. I think part of the reason why I have an issue with moderators, one, because I think I do it better than anybody else. Thank you very much. I think it's important for, like Susan described, this is like the sole place where the community gets to drive the bus. And if we allow for an outside moderator, someone who's not a community member, that it's an opportunity for the military to control the conversation more, right? They would cut us off. And so I think a moderator is something that we probably would be the least likely to entertain. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments on moderators.
No.
I'm so sad that Keith has jumped off because I saw that he was on, but no, we don't need any more Keiths to cut people off at 2 minutes. The public deserves an opportunity to speak.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right, I would like to make sure I say some thank yous, and would like to thank the Office of Hawaiian Affairs for providing this room to us for free. They are an amazing team of people. All of the mics and the screens and everything, everything is great. I want to thank Oren for providing the live stream. Way to go. And Oahu Films for providing the video coverage, and to Kapālama for providing the food. And I probably forgot to thank somebody, but thank you very much, everybody who's done all the things that helped to make this possible, and hopefully we get to do it again next month. The next meeting is I think it's May 18th, but I didn't write it down, so don't quote me. I will put it in the closing notes for the broadcast. All right.
16th.
Okay, thank you. It's May 16th. The next meeting will be May 16th. For the military and EPA officials who are watching this, please mark your calendars. We would very much like to see you. Please come to the meeting on May 16th. And the location still needs to be figured out. All right, thank you very much. Aloha.
Good night. I'm Moku. My grandson.
Thank you. Record.
Which one?
On the one that I had Jack.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, because when you said it didn't make sense, that it didn't happen, and then when I took a peek at the next one, I was like,
Oh, you're glad to bring that up.
thank you.
We ended this before 8 o'clock. What?
Yay, we did it. One more meeting done.
I forgot to thank you.
Oh. I'm gonna thank you real quick. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Hey, good job.